L'inquinante perfetto, no? In odore, in colore, in sapore.
In the 1950s, a new class of chemical compounds was developed.
They resist to extreme heat. They are greaseproof, waterproof, oil-proof.
They were hailed as revolutionary.
Cookware never needs scouring. If it has DuPont, Teflon.
But they can also be deadly.
Questo qua è morto recentemente, questo.
And they never go away.
They persist in the soil, the water, the wildlife. They get into living things as well. This stuff is everywhere. It's truly global contamination on an unprecedented scale.
Many believe this pollution crisis could have been avoided.
The first studies of PFAS toxicity was apparently carried out in the 1960s and the 1970s. What did they do? They kept it hidden.
People in Power meets the men and women fighting to bring those responsible to justice.
Vorrei dire prima di tutto che questo non è un processo per violazione dei limiti tabellari di scarichi, ma è un processo per inquinamento.
Vicenza, in the northeastern Italian region of Veneto, is currently the stage for the biggest trial for environmental crimes in Italian history.
È un caso nuovo perché nuova è la sostanza di cui ci stiamo occupando, i PFAS, che qualcuno ha definito l'oro alchemico e altri hanno definito il nemico invisibile.
15 former managers of Italian chemical company Miteni, which was owned until 2009 by Japan's Mitsubishi Corporation, are facing charges for environmental disaster, water poisoning and bankruptcy.
L'ipotesi dell'ufficio del pubblico ministero è che l'azienda Miteni di Trissino abbia deliberatamente avvelenato per anni, e per quello che oggi ci interessa in particolare con sostanze denominate PFAS, PFOA e FOS in particolare, la falda acquifera sottostante.
This is a story of how our planet became contaminated with forever chemicals, and how corporations and individuals concealed what they knew until they couldn't anymore. The story begins in the United States.
One day, I get a phone call in my office, and there's a gentleman who's pretty much yelling on the other end of the line about cows dying on his property, and that I needed to help him with that.
This is a 107th calf that's met this problem right here. That calf has died miserable. It's kicked and thumped and rollered around there like you wouldn't believe, and dying. There's been 56 cows that's been burnt less like this.
This gentleman on the other end of the line, who identified himself as Wilbur Tennant, and he was convinced, he knew what was happening. There was clearly something in this white foam coming out of the landfill next to his property. It was making his cows sick.
And I still say it's this stuff up here, he says, in this water that's causing this problem. One of these days, it's going to have to come out in the open. And when it comes out in the open, somebody's going to have to wipe and clean up.
And then Mr. Tennant explained to me he had even called the owner of the landfill. And at that point, he revealed it was owned by DuPont. That was October of 1998.
DuPont was not alone. Thousands of kilometers away in Italy, Miteni was leaching the same chemicals into local waterways. Both were handling a class of chemicals called PFAS, per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. they're highly resistant to heat, oil, and water. Since the 1950s, they've been used in countless products, ranging from cookware and clothing to pharmaceuticals and building materials.
The structure of the PFAS is it's like a chain. These are all carbons here. Each of these carbons is bound to fluorine, and that bond is maybe the most stable in chemistry. You can't break it.
Even burned food won't stick to Teflon, so it's always easy to clean. Cookware never needs scouring. If it has DuPont, Teflon.
And that makes the raincoat rainproof. And you can also spray this on microelectronics. And for years and years, this was thought to be a miracle for industrial purposes, commercial purposes. And nobody thought very much about, but couldn't this be bad for people?
Noi lo chiamavamo APO, che è un acronimo italiano per acido perfluorotanoico, che era il prodotto principe delle miteni.
Miteni è un'azienda divenuta in pochi anni leader nel settore della chimica del fluoro. È il partner ideale per chi intende sviluppare principi attivi fluorurati nel settore dei farmaci, fitofarmaci e coloranti.
Miteni supplied its products to 2 or 3 major chemical companies, including DuPont.
Noi avevamo la percezione che lavoravamo con prodotti pericolosi, perché per esempio l'acido fluoririco è un acido molto pericoloso.
Miteni è il secondo produttore al mondo di perfluorurati per elettrofluorurazione, tensioattivi, additivi per polimeri, fluidi inerti per elettronica, eccetera.
Sul fatto delle polveri che potevamo inalare e comunque andare a contatto, tanto è un inerte, così ci dicevano, quindi non eravamo consapevoli della pericolosità.
Miteni's management is accused of having deliberately discharged hazardous chemicals into the environment.
The PFAS, these compounds, when they enter the environment, they will disseminate.
As a result, Europe's second largest underground water basin, which supplies drinking water to 350,000 people, is contaminated with PFAS, also known as forever chemicals.
We call them forever chemicals because they are extremely difficult to break down. And we have never met a blood sample from a human being that did not contain PFAS. We always find it. Everybody is exposed.
La prima volta che ho sentito la sigla PFAS l'ho letta sulle analisi di mia figlia nel 2017. Tutti quanti abbiamo capito che la situazione era grave e che i valori di queste molecole nel sangue dei nostri figli erano tra le più alte al mondo, insomma. Nel giro di qualche ora mi hanno telefonato delle altre mamme e abbiamo deciso di incontrarci al bar con queste analisi in mano insieme di cercare di capire cosa dovevamo fare.
Michaela and the other mothers formed a campaign group, Mothers Against PFAS, and started compiling information.
All'inizio avevamo capito che il problema era l'acqua del rubinetto. È stato in un secondo momento, cioè nel giro di qualche mese, che abbiamo capito che quella era la punta dell'iceberg. E il 22 di ottobre abbiamo fatto la prima manifestazione del 2017, abbiamo portato in piazza 11.000 persone.
No! Fatevi un applauso e urlate insieme a noi!
Grande partecipazione alla manifestazione organizzata da Mamme No FAS per chiedere a gran voce quello che dovrebbe essere un diritto scontato: acqua pulita.
Vuole lanciare un appello per la popolazione?
Dobbiamo stare allerta perché quello che è successo è un po' colpa di tutti, perché ci siamo fidati, adesso non possiamo più fidarci.
This cow eyes are cloudy with pink eyes, what they'll call it, and I'm going to cut her open and find out why it caused her to die.
When we first took on that case for Mr. Tennant, we started the process of bringing a formal lawsuit against DuPont. And we were able to get access to those internal documents at DuPont. What I saw in those documents revealed that there was, this incredibly toxic, persistent, bioactive, carcinogenic substance in massive quantities in the water these cows were drinking that had gone completely unregulated.
This is what her teeth looks like. That's the upper one. This is the lower one.
Documents detailing a chemical that they were using to make Teflon. And that chemical was PFOA. And this was one of these chemicals that 3M had invented back in the late 1940s. DuPont had started purchasing it from 3M as early as 1951.
Animals just don't achieve all these problems here by eating grass. And if it'll affect their eyes on newborn calves and affect these kidneys like this and affects them lungs, then it's all through that animal, from one end to the other.
DuPont and 3M had been studying this particular chemical, PFOA, going back decades. But most of this information I was seeing had never been shared outside of the company.
It was kept secret until about year 2000, when there was a whistleblower who said, there's a problem here.
I resigned my position as environmental specialist effective April 6, 1999. I can no longer participate in the process that 3M has established for the management of PFAS. For me, it is unethical to be concerned with market, legal defensibility, and image over environmental safety.
Have you ever regretted putting down those words?
No, I haven't.
And then the authorities, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, who asked the companies to reveal what they had hidden during all of those years.
And for me and the group I was in, the most obvious piece of data was the blood of a baby eagle who lived on Lake Superior, a pure water body, and it had it in its blood. Those are, oh my God, situations, and should be reported to EPA. And they didn't report, I don't know that they reported the eagle blood to the EPA.
The presence of PFAS in wildlife was not reported to the EPA until the year 2000, and that allowed environmental pollution to continue for years.
My most important study was published in 2012, and pollution started in 1960. So it's more than 50 years of pollution, including exposure to people.
So it all starts from the manufacturers, the PFAS production sites that for a long time have not even thought of limiting their emissions. So a lot of PFAS gets released into the air, into the water, into the soil. So it's a never-ending problem. We keep on accumulating it. Here you can see some very massive clusters around Belgium, for instance. Why? Because we have some big PFAS producers, especially the 3M factory. Insane PFAS concentrations that have been measured.
The Forever Pollution Project is mapping the extent of PFAS contamination across Europe.
We found that the contamination was everywhere and that it was massive, which is why we like to call it the worst pollution crisis in human history. If you check Italy, so Mitteni, well, plenty of samples all around that point towards very, very high pollution.
Quando sono arrivato io scaricavano le centrifughe con la sensor e tu aprivi i coperti o quando questo fosse e tiravi via con la spatola e caricavi il fusto. Poi legavi un'altra fossetta qua, sì. Tagliavi qua e ripartivi a fare il secondo fusto.
Ok.
In the late 1970s, Mitteni, 3M and DuPont began measuring PFAS levels in their workers' bodies.
A noi dicono che la produzione ha delle problematiche ambientali perché il FOA è bioresistente, però non si parla mai di problemi sulle persone, sui lavoratori.
They found high levels of PFAS in their blood and that the chemicals remained for years after exposure.
C'era il discorso del reprotossico, per precauzioni tutte le donne che erano esposte ai FOA quando comunicavano di essere in gravidanza o venivano spostate o comunque venivano lasciate in maternità anticipata e si chiudeva lì sostanzialmente.
3M and DuPont did the same. Animal studies carried out by these companies found exposure to PFAS caused birth defects in rats. So, in 1981, they started removing women from areas with potential exposure to PFAS.
Io sono un'infermiera, io collaboro con i medici di base. La cosa che ci ha scosso di più e che noi avevamo già intuito erano proprio i nostri bambini. I bambini che nascevano piccoli per età gestazionale, una grande percentuale di aborti, mamme col diabete in gravidanza. Io stessa ho avuto tutte queste cose, abortività, per cui ho avuto un aborto, ho avuto il diabete in gravidanza e la cosa poi che ci ha veramente fatto star tanto male, il fatto che noi comunque con l'allattamento e attraverso la gravidanza li abbiamo passati.
The PFAS have the property that they can bind to proteins to make things worse. PFAS is excreted in the human milk. And the baby will get, because it's a smaller size, the baby may get, with time, up to 10 times as much in the blood as the mother had. And now that's contaminated with some of the most toxic chemicals that we know of.
According to court documents, 3M and DuPont shared their toxicological data with European manufacturers as early as 1995. They set up a working group through the Association of Plastics Manufacturers in Europe, which is today called Plastics Europe.
Plastics Europe is the main group that represents the interest of the fluoropolymer industry.
Since 2023, it's been lobbying against a proposed PFAS ban in the European Union.
So with this document, you can see a perfect example of the main arguments that this industry likes to put forward to make them believe that there is no problem with fluoropolymers and PFAS in general. With the Forever Lobbying Project, we have decided to gather many of those documents and arguments and to put them through a stress test. And yeah, we found out that basically all of these arguments are either false, misleading, or impossible to verify, basically.
Plastics Europe declined to be interviewed, but said in a statement that fluoropolymers that are produced today do not pose the same risks as other PFAS. It added that they are indispensable to modern society and can be manufactured and used responsibly.
Here, one big thing, persistence. And Plastics Europe says that persistence is not a problem because they can take care of limiting emissions in the production and destruction phase.
I mean, what you're seeing here is essentially the same type of talking points we've seen for decades. Persistence is the issue. The fact that these chemicals do not break apart and that once they get into living things, they stay there. That's the real concern, because the longer something is there, the longer it has this ability to act as this ticking time bomb, more potential for harm.
In 2023, the WHO's Cancer Research Agency confirmed a link between PFAS exposure and several forms of cancer.
The working group classified PFOA as carcinogenic to humans. The Group 1 evaluation for PFOA was based on sufficient evidence for cancer in experimental animals and strong mechanistic evidence in exposed humans for renal cell carcinoma, which is the main form of kidney cancer, and for testicular cancer.
Quei colleghi ci sono ancora tutti?
No.
C'è qualcuno che non c'è più.
A mortality study on Miteni workers has found an increased death rate in association with higher exposure to these chemicals.
Questo qua ha avuto un tumore alla prostata, poi sono complicate. Questo qua è morto, anche questo. È un mio compagno di scuola anche. Poi dopo questo qua, anche questo qua è morto recentemente questo.
Another study also suggests that PFAS released by Miteni caused almost 4,000 excess deaths between 1980 and 2018 in Veneto.
One extra person died who shouldn't have died every 3 or 4 days or so, associated with the pollution.
Vogliamo una cosa sola, vogliamo giustizia. Il processo è chiaro. A me non interessano montagne e di documenti. L'unico documento che mi fa andare avanti è che queste sostanze nel sangue di mia figlia non devono esserci e ce le hanno messe loro. Non dobbiamo permettere che succeda più per i vostri figli e per i figli dei vostri figli. Un abbraccio a tutti quanti.
La Corte d'Assise di Vicenza, in nome del popolo italiano, condanna Osoda Maki alla pena di 11 anni di reclusione, Kimura Nayuki alla pena di 16 anni di reclusione, Suetsune Yuji alla pena di 16 anni di reclusione, Schnitzer Patrick Fritz Hendrik alla pena di 17 anni di reclusione.
11 former Miteni executives were found guilty of contaminating the drinking water in Italy's Veneto region and causing an environmental disaster. They were sentenced to a total of 141 years in prison. The court also awarded around $87 million in damages.
L'udienza è tolta, buona giornata a tutti.
This is a landmark ruling in a landmark trial and could set a precedent for similar cases worldwide.